In 2021, while drilling about 11 feet beneath the surface of permafrost in northeastern Siberia, researchers uncovered a 24,000-year-old frozen life form. And then, they brought it to life. Before cloning it, or better said, it cloned itself. This might sound like the beginning of a sinister horror story, but don't worry, it's actually quite the opposite. What scientists unearthed was a microscopic frozen organism that could fundamentally reshape what we think about evolution and survival. The uncovered tiny creatures are called bdelloid rotifers, microscopic animals with little wheel-like mouths that they use both for moving and feeding. They were first discovered in 1696 and are fairly common in freshwater environments around the world, with a few saltwater species. They might seem unremarkable, but scientists have been studying them since early microscopes made it possible to actually see them. Because even though there are only a few dozen microns wide, they're surprisingly complex, with brains, guts, muscles, and reproductive systems. Could it be that within that complexity lies the secret to ultimate resilience, maybe even for us humans? Let's break it down. These creatures are extremophiles. That means they can survive being completely drained of water at any point in their life cycle, then lie dormant until rehydrated. But that's not all. They can also persevere through some of the harshest conditions on Earth, or in outer space, or even being stuck in the Siberian permafrost wasteland for tens of thousands of years. This is possible because they can enter cryptobiosis, a condition where organisms pause their metabolism and become nearly inactive. It may sound sciencey, but actually, some of the everyday products we eat are stored in a fridge thanks to this phenomenon. Take yeast, for example. Live yeast cells are surrounded by a protective layer made of dead cells and some nutrients. You can keep yeast at room temperature, but if cryptobiosis comes into play, in the form of your fridge or freezer, it stores much better and longer. During cryptobiosis, rotifers accumulate protective compounds like chaperone proteins, which help them repair and recover once favorable conditions return. Chaperone proteins are like tiny bodyguards. Their job is to keep other proteins in the cell from falling apart under pressure. When the body is stressed, whether from heat, cold, toxins, dehydration, or just the natural aging process, the proteins inside our cells can start to misfold. Proteins need to be folded into very specific shapes to function properly, and when that structure breaks down, they become useless, or worse, harmful. Misfolded proteins can pile up and interfere with normal cell function. In some cases, they clump together in ways that poison the cell. This kind of damage is even linked to serious health conditions. So, if rotifers have developed powerful proteins that prevent cellular chaos even under extreme conditions, could we use them to protect human cells from diseases and aging? By analyzing the age of the ice they were found in, scientists figured out that these frozen rotifers were at least 24,000 years old. That's a huge leap from earlier studies, which showed they could survive frozen for only about 10 years. Now that's what you call record-breaking. This period of Earth's history is known as the Late Pleistocene Epoch, a time dominated by the Ice Age, which means these invertebrates were lying dormant when Manny and Sid were having their adventure while roaming the icy landscapes, along with saber-toothed cats and giant ground sloths. Fun fact: although animated movies like Ice Age show woolly mammoths as huge, towering giants, they were actually about the same size and weight as today's average African elephant. Nature and evolution can be so cruel, yet fascinatingly unpredictable. Massive, menacing beasts that came from the Ice Age couldn't survive it, yet something tiny and weird, like a bdelloid, could. But regarding our unfrozen creature, after the soil thawed, the organism didn't just begin moving again, it also started reproducing. This is thanks to an ability called Parthenogenesis, a specific form of reproduction in which embryos develop from unfertilized eggs, allowing them to reproduce independently. It really is like cloning, but it happens naturally. Many organisms, such as certain insects, reptiles, and even some birds, are capable of parthenogenesis, at least under specific conditions. For example, in honeybees, males develop from unfertilized eggs through parthenogenesis, making them genetic copies of their mother. However, parthenogenesis is often seen as an evolutionary disadvantage because it limits genetic diversity, meaning that most species that reproduce this way eventually face extinction. Despite this, bdelloid rotifers have diversified into over 450 distinct species over millions of years, which is extremely rare. Scientists believe their survival comes down to a few evolutionary adaptations. They can pause their metabolism through cryptobiosis, repair their DNA with specialized proteins, and even borrow useful genes from other organisms using a process called horizontal gene transfer. Unlike most animals which rely solely on inherited DNA, these organisms can steal genetic material from bacteria, fungi, and even plants, splicing foreign genes into their genome to gain new survival traits. Some studies have shown that up to 10% of their active genome comes from foreign DNA. This could explain their extraordinary resilience. They borrow genes for stress resistance, toxin breakdown, or radiation repair, essentially patching and upgrading their DNA in real time. It's not like the Mind Flayer from Stranger Things, where the creature absorbs another organism to improve itself and grow. It's more like a spy stealing a blueprint from a rival lab to learn its secrets. When cells rupture, for example, when bacteria die nearby, bdelloids scoop up loose DNA fragments and integrate them into their own genome. Interestingly, the usual expected lifespan of bdelloid rotifers under normal circumstances is only 2 weeks. The soil sample that contained these rotifers also held nematodes or roundworms, another group of tiny survivors already known to withstand tens of thousands of years icebound. This isn't just limited to microscopic animals. Researchers have successfully regrown Antarctic moss and entire Campion plants from seeds and samples frozen for hundreds or even thousands of years. In 2016, a team of Japanese scientists brought tardigrades, or simply water bears, back to life after 30 years in cryptobiosis. Tardigrades are even more impressive because they can live in a suspended state for up to 30 years, without food or water, and with temperature swings from deep freeze to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. These guys can also endure crushing deep-sea pressures, vacuum, microgravity, and intense radiation of space. Remember when we said earlier that these species can survive the harshest conditions on Earth and beyond? It wasn't an exaggeration, and now you understand why. And it's exactly why NASA and its partners sent water bears and bdelloid rotifers into orbit. They've even been aboard the ISS, helping scientists understand how these animals handle microgravity, radiation, and stress. Not only that, but in 2007, the European Space Agency launched a bunch of tardigrades into low Earth orbit, completely exposed. No suit, no shield, floating in a vacuum. They were blasted by cosmic radiation, UV light 1,000 times stronger than what hits Earth's surface, and temperatures near absolute zero. And when they came back, most of them woke up and reproduced despite the harsh conditions they were exposed to. This ties into an old theory called panspermia, the idea that life didn't originate on Earth but arrived here, locked in space dust or trapped inside a meteorite. Before, maybe it sounded like a fringe science, but when organisms can brush off cosmic radiation, then it doesn't seem so far-fetched, does it? What about humans? Does this mean we now fully understand the way hibernation works and are close to putting humans in this state? Sorry for spoiling it for you, but it still feels more like science fiction. However, researching rotifers, water bears, and similar organisms can lead to massive breakthroughs in other fields. Their resilience might be a blueprint for medicine, for reshaping what it means to age, maybe even to pause life itself, or extend it. We're talking real, practical innovations, from better preservation of human organs for transplantation to drugs that slow aging at the cellular level. And yes, maybe even cryogenic hibernation, long enough to make interstellar travel possible.
You know, it's pretty tough to come up with something original when you've never seen it before. But what about those creepy mythical creatures then? Werewolves, vampires, or let's say, cyclopses? Don't worry, Cyclops as we picture them never actually roamed the Earth, as far as I know. But their creation definitely had some real-world inspiration. Turns out, ancient tales of these one-eyed giants might have been stirred up by a certain animal: dwarf elephants. Let's rewind to the Pleistocene era. It's where the inspiration for Cyclops lies. When sea levels were lower, animals could waltz from one island to another. Elephants and mammoths were just chilling together. But then the Ice Age ended, and ice melted, and bam! Those land bridges were underwater, leaving some animals stranded. With food running low, smaller elephants had the best chance at survival, leading to dwarf versions that were just about 3 feet tall at the shoulder. Now, here's where it gets interesting. When those little elephants passed away, they left behind skeletons that might have looked like a giant with a single eye. The trunk, which is soft and doesn't fossilize well, was gone. And without tusks, the skulls could totally resemble something out of a monster mash. Yikes! So when the Greeks showed up and stumbled upon these skulls, they could have thought they had stumbled upon massive creatures with a single eye. And poof! The legend of the Cyclops was born. Remember that cute cartoon about a mermaid? Well, sorry to break your pink glasses, but the true story didn't end happily. The Little Mermaid and Eric did not tie the knot. In Hans Christian Andersen's original fairy tale, the Little Mermaid is faced with the choice to slay the prince. However, when it's time to act, she discovers that she is unable to harm him. Instead, she chooses to sacrifice herself to save him, ultimately turning into sea foam. Right, but where does the mermaid character come from? Hans Christian Andersen wasn't the first to dream up mermaids. Long ago, people thought the ocean was full of all kinds of mythical beings, like krakens and sea serpents, adding a bit of mystery to the waters. The earliest known half-fish, half-human character is Wanus, a Babylonian deity from the 4th century BCE who swam ashore by day and returned to the sea at night. Similarly, ancient Greek sirens, initially depicted as bird women, lured sailors to their demise in Homer's Odyssey. Over time, they've turned into the fish-tailed mermaids we know today, with the word siren now often meaning mermaid in several languages. Traditionally, they're wicked. Sure, mermaids are just make-believe, but their stories can grab people's imagination. Like Christopher Columbus. When he sailed in 1492, he swore he saw a mermaid. Spoiler alert, it was actually a manatee, which is basically the original sea cow. And they're not even that much of fish, they're closer relatives to elephants. Now, it might seem strange to mix up a lazy sea creature with a gorgeous half-fish lady, but it's not just Columbus who made that mistake. That's why manatees and their cousins, dugongs, are grouped together in Sirenia. In Japanese folklore, certain animals are attributed with supernatural qualities believed to affect human affairs. These entities fall under the category of yokai, specifically known as henge or shapeshifters. The most notable among these creatures are the cunning fox spirits called kitsune and the tanuki. Let's tackle this one step at a time. If you Google tanuki, you'll get a bunch of adorable pics in Google Images. The reason for that is simple. It is indeed tanuki in Japanese, but in English, we should say Japanese raccoon dog if we want to refer to an actual animal. However, the word tanuki can have two meanings, both an actual animal and its folklore namesake. The mythical version, called Bake Tanuki, pops up in stories and legends all over Japan, while tanuki are real animals. Bake Tanuki are portrayed as quirky, supernatural beings. In some areas, the tanuki is said to have shape-shifting abilities, similar to those of foxes. It can become anything or anyone, and some stories even claim that it can possess humans. Now, kitsune are inspired by foxes. Their looks speak for themselves. These magical animals get wiser and more powerful as they age. Just like tanuki, they can shapeshift into humans or other forms. and they're known for their tricks. While some stories talk about kitsune playing pranks, others show them as loyal friends or even lovers. Back in ancient Japan, foxes and humans hung out a lot, leading to all sorts of legends. By the way, the number of tails a kitsune has is the key. The more tails, up to 9, the older and more powerful it is. Some folks even make offerings to them as if they were deities. I mean, who wouldn't want a wise fox on their side? Today, dire wolves are widely recognized due to their connection with the Stark kids in Game of Thrones. However, these creatures were not merely a product of the show's creators' imagination. Much larger than contemporary wolves, dire wolves inhabited the Americas until their extinction around 10,000 years ago. Over 4,000 fossilized remains of these animals were unearthed at the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles, where they may have become trapped while scavenging on the remains of other animals that had fallen in. The dire wolf had an exceptionally large skull, yet its brain was smaller compared to that of modern wolves. If they had possessed larger brains, they might have been more discerning and recognized the dangers posed by the tar pits. Additionally, while there is no record of albino dire wolves, albino cubs have been documented among modern wolves. Check out this creepy sea serpent with multiple heads. It's called the Hydra in Greek mythology, and according to the legend, one of its 9 heads was immortal. So every time you lopped one off, 2 more popped up. Hercules had to take on this beast as one of his biggest challenges, and his nephew lent a hand. While Hercules was busy playing whack-a-mole with the heads, his nephew was cauterizing the wounds to stop them from coming back. Eventually, he managed to chop off the immortal head and buried it under a hefty rock. Believe it or not, this wild story might have had a basis in reality. There are a few documented cases of snakes with multiple heads, though 9 is pretty rare. Reptiles seem to be more prone to this kind of thing compared to other animals. Still, no records about one of those heads being immortal. Duh. Giants have been a part of stories forever. Take Greek mythology, for example. There's the Gigantus, a wild crew of 100 giants that sprang from Gaia after she had had a rough breakup with Uranus. Not exactly a fairy tale, right? Then there's Ergelmir from Norse mythology, who was born when icy Niflheim waters mixed with the fiery heat of Muspelheim. Now let's switch gears to real-life giants. Some folks had a condition called hereditary gigantism, which helps explain the tales of these towering figures. Scientists think they found a gene linked to it. Plus, some people have pituitary tumors that kick growth hormones into overdrive. Take Goliath, for example. He was reportedly over 9 feet tall. There's no universal height for a giant since it varies by culture. A study even suggested that Goliath might have had a genetic background contributing to his size. When David took him down with a slingshot, he hit Goliath right in the forehead. Imagine if Goliath had had a pituitary tumor messing with his eyesight. It would have been a classic case of, didn't see that one coming. And speaking of giants, meet Robert Wadlow, the tallest guy ever recorded. He stood at an insane 8 feet 11.1 inches and weighed 439 pounds. Basically, a human reindeer. As a kid, he was always the tallest. At 8, he was already as tall as his father, and by 9, he could carry him around. By graduation, he had hit 8 feet 4 inches.
Now, you can't find living dinosaurs nowadays, which is a good thing, mostly, but you can still meet some creatures that might have gone to lunch with them. The frilled shark, for example, is a living fossil that comes from a family of sharks that have been around for about 80 million years. One of the coolest things about it is its long, eel-like body that can grow as long as 6 feet. It has 6 pairs of gills on his throat, which help the frilled shark breathe in the deep, cold ocean where there isn't much oxygen. The shark can move very quickly, like a snake, to catch its prey when it least expects it. Little frilled sharks take an exceptionally long time to grow, up to 3.5 years, which is one of the longest times for any animal with a backbone. The Chinese giant salamander is another living fossil that can tell you what was going on Earth around 170 million years ago. Now, when I say tell, I really mean it, as it can make sounds like hisses, whistles, and barks, and even a noise that sounds like a crying kid. The biggest Chinese salamander found so far weighed 130 pounds, as heavy as 2 Dalmatians, and was almost 6 feet long. Giant salamanders like to be alone. Hey, I want to be alone. And will chase away other salamanders from their space, except when it's time to start a family. During the day, they hide and sleep under rocks. They can make a special substance from their skin that keeps predators away. Now, gharials are reptiles that have been around for about 38 million years. They live in India and Nepal in slow-moving, muddy rivers. Sadly, there are very few gharials left in the wild, less than 100. These creatures can't control their body temperature, so they need to sunbathe to get warm or cool down in the water if they get too hot. Their eyes are close together and face forward, which helps them see in 3 dimensions and judge distances more accurately. Gharials also have a transparent third eyelid that protects their eyes when they're underwater. They have over 100 sharp teeth, but they can't chew their food. Instead, they use their strong jaws to grab prey and then, swallow it whole. The alligator gar is a fish that has a family history of more than 100 million years. It still has some cool features from ancient times, like being able to breathe both air and water. It also has a special spiral-shaped intestine, like a shark. The alligator gar is one of the biggest and heaviest fish in North America. Just like an alligator, it has a long body and snout, plus a row of sharp teeth. But instead of legs, the gar has fins to help it swim underwater. The tuatara isn't a lizard as you might think, and isn't a dinosaur either. This New Zealand resident is one of the most unique animals in the world. Scientists love studying tuataras because they can help us understand how today's lizards and snakes evolved. One of the coolest things about the tuatara is its third eye, called a parietal eye, on its head. It has its own lens, retina, and a nerve that connects it to the brain. Scientists think it might help the tuatara know when it's light or dark outside and absorb sunlight to make vitamin D or help them keep their body temperature exactly right. Tuataras can live an extraordinarily long time, up to 100 years. Cassowaries are the youngsters on our list, as they've been around for only 60 million years. They have some things in common with dinosaurs, like their 3-toed feet and how they breathe. Cassowaries love to eat fruit, lots and lots of fruit. This love of fruit helps the rainforest, because when cassowaries eat the fruit, their bodies don't harm the seeds inside. As they move around the forest, they spread these seeds, you can guess how, with their own natural fertilizer, helping new plants grow. Cassowaries are big birds, about 6 feet tall and weigh over 100 pounds. They have a special claw on each foot that is 5 inches long, and they can use it to kick real fast. If they feel threatened, they can charge, kick, and even jump on someone. They can also leap up to 5 feet in the air. So, the best thing to do is stay far, far away from where they live. The order Notostraca is a group of crustaceans that you may know as tadpole shrimp or shield shrimps. These animals have been around for about 360 million years. They have a wide, flat shell that covers their head, and they have a pair of eyes on top. These creatures can be found all over the world in different kinds of water, like freshwater, brackish water, and even salty pools. They can also look different depending on where they live. Notostracans aren't picky eaters and can snack on pretty much anything, from plants to small animals and other shrimps. Some of them are considered pests in places like California rice paddies because they stir up the mud, which blocks sunlight from reaching the young rice plants. Sturgeons are some of the largest fish species on the planet. They live only in the cool waters of the northern hemisphere and never travel below the equator. Even though they are huge, sturgeons don't have teeth. They eat by sucking food off the bottom of rivers, gulfs, lakes, and oceans. Scientists believe that sturgeons came from a group of fish that first appeared around 419 million years ago, long before dinosaurs even existed. Their ancestors survived a big extinction event that wiped out 90% of all species and went on to become the largest fish in many rivers in North America and Eurasia. Sturgeons can live up to 100 years old or even older. Female sturgeons can lay up to 3 million eggs at a time, but not all of the eggs eventually turn into real fish. Our next hero, the Pacific lamprey, has successfully lived through at least 4 mass extinctions. Its ancient ancestors evolved over 450 million years ago. These creatures have cartilage instead of bones and a third eye, which is a special light-sensing organ on top of their heads. Instead of a regular jaw, they have a mouth surrounded by teeth. They latch onto prey and sup up body fluids like real underwater vampires. And although he wasn't living underwater, the story goes that King Henry I of England might have lost his life because of a lamprey. The English monarch loved this fish so much that he defied doctors' orders to stop eating its flesh. He got sick every time he'd have it, but the lack of bones and the unusual taste made the royal fall in love with it. As a result, he got some scary symptoms from eating lamprey and eventually passed away. Can you say clueless? The elephant fish, also called the Australian ghost shark, has been on Earth for around 400 million years. Even though they're related to sharks, they aren't actually sharks. Instead of bones, their bodies are made entirely of cartilage. These fish have a special shiny tissue in their eyes that can make their eyes look like they change color from yellow to green. Elephant fish can be pretty tough and will fight back if they feel threatened. They like to be alone and usually don't hang out with other fish. Horseshoe crabs also deserve the title of survival champs, as they've been around even before dinosaurs, since 450 million years ago. 4 species are still roaming the ocean from Maine all the way to Mexico. Horseshoe crabs are more like spiders than ticks than they are like real crabs. They have 9 eyes, plus extra light sensors near their tails so they can see really well. They breathe underwater using flap-like gills near their belly, and sometimes they use these gills to swim upside down. Every spring, when the tide is high, these creatures come up to the beach at night to mate and lay their eggs, and you can see hundreds of thousands of them.
In 1952, an Air Force plane called C-124 Globemaster II crashed into a big mountain while flying from Washington to Alaska. Sadly, everyone on board, 52 people in total, didn't make it. The bad weather at the time made it hard to find the crash site, and even later, any attempts to locate it failed. But in 2012, a helicopter crew doing a training mission spotted the pieces of the crashed plane on a glacier called Colony Glacier in Alaska. They started looking for more pieces and confirmed it was indeed the missing plane. Since then, every summer for about a decade, different military groups have been helping in an operation called Colony Glacier. They've managed to identify 40 out of the 52 people whose lives were lost in the crash. The soldiers taking part in this mission take their promise seriously to never leave a fallen comrade behind. They believe it's their duty to bring back those who didn't make it. Another discovery comes from the Alps. In 1991, some hikers exploring the picturesque Alps stumbled upon a human body. It was half frozen in ice at the top of a mountain pass between Italy and Austria. At first, the local police thought it might be a mountaineering accident. But in a few weeks, archaeologists started claiming that this guy might have lived more than 5,000 years ago. They eventually gave the frozen fellow the nickname Oetzi. He was named after the nearby Oetzi Valley. He's become quite famous as the oldest ice mummy on record. Oetzi's frozen state might not be as unique as we thought, and that's where things get really cool. Archaeologists have another theory. See, at first, everyone was convinced that Oetzi marked the start of a cooler period because he had been frozen in the ice without any interruptions since he had lost his life. Yet, over the past few decades, glaciers and ice patches worldwide have been melting away like ice cream on a hot summer day. Not just Oetzi. But other ancient relics like bodies, hunting gear, horse droppings, and even ancient skis started to appear. So, archaeologists say there are similar sites. They found quite a few, and they all fit perfectly into this growing field of glacial archaeology. It seems like as the world warms up, it will show even more ancient secrets from the deep freeze. Moving on to another amazing discovery. In 2018, William Taylor and Nick Jarman were exploring the snowy slopes of Mongolia's Altai Mountains. They found an ancient treasure trove hidden in the ice. Inside the trove, they found a well-preserved 3,000-year-old arrow shaft adorned with ochre markings. It was in pristine condition, a rarity for organic items that old. They found other items too, like a bronze arrowhead with bits of animal sinew still attached. All of these relics had been untouched for hundreds of years, since they had been locked in the ice. In Mongolia, rising temperatures have melted ice patches that remained frozen for centuries. Similar discoveries have been made in the Yukon, US, Italy, Siberia, and Norway. Thousands of sites have been identified. Yet, scientists are racing against time to document and preserve these artifacts before they're lost forever. The study of these artifacts challenges the definition of these environments as wildernesses and shows how indigenous people coexisted with nature there. Sometimes people find simple items too, as simple as a sandal. This one, discovered on one of central Norway's mountain passes, indicates that people used this route roughly 1,700 years ago. This suggests that there was less snow and ice in that area back then. The sandal, dating back to around 300 BCE, resembles Roman sandals of that era. Again, in Norway, hunters found an iron sword high up on a mountain, more than 5,250 feet above sea level. There's no nearby burial site, and it's puzzling why someone would have a sword in such a remote location. Archaeologists speculate that the owner might have become lost. Then, in 2011, unusual objects resembling giant slingshots began to emerge as the ice melted. Radiocarbon dating suggests that this particular object was crafted around 400 BCE. It measures over 3 feet long and has knife cuts. Those puzzled archaeologists until one team member recognized them as tang, or pliers, used to secure loads on sleds when transporting hay or leaving for animal food. People in the area used hay sleds with pliers until the 1950s, when tractors became more common. Now, let's get back in time to thousands of years ago. We can easily do that by looking at this woolly mammoth. This creature looks a bit like a cherished but slightly worn-out toy. This ancient giant, whose heyday was 39,000 years ago, is the best preserved mammoth ever found. Even its signature shaggy hair is surprisingly well preserved, having been trapped in glacial ice until its recent discovery in Siberia. This remarkable animal is stepping into the limelight in Yokohama, Japan. Scientists are running tests that might bring this extinct species back to life. When they stumbled upon this female mammoth, they uncovered a hidden treasure, a sample of her blood preserved beneath the ice. So they believe this ancient blood could hold the key to resurrecting the mammoth. They also found well-preserved muscle tissue. She was between 50 and 60 years old when she met her icy fate. The discovery of mammoth blood has reignited debates about the ethics of bringing back extinct creatures, like in Jurassic Park. Their ambitious plan is to implant an egg into a living elephant for a 22-month pregnancy, hoping that at least one living mammoth cell might survive. Hop on, we're going to the French Alps. We are at a spot not far from where an Air India plane tragically crashed 46 years ago. We're accompanied by a diligent mountain rescuer and his neighbor. They went to this area after a bunch of tourists had noticed a strange-looking thingy on a glacier. It was a bag. The Indian embassy in Paris got wind of it, and it was all set on getting that bag. What makes it kinda cool is that it had Diplomatic Mail and Ministry of External Affairs written on it. The Air India flight was on its way from Mumbai to New York when it took a nosedive in January 1966. It took 117 people on board down with it. Guess what else was inside the bag besides the soaked diplomatic mail? It had a stack of old Indian newspapers. So, alongside those, they also found bits of the plane's cabin, a lone shoe, and a bunch of cables. Totally unexpected treasures on that mountain. During the summer of 2013, scientists stumbled upon a message left behind by a geologist named Walker, who had placed it there 44 years before. That message sort of served as the man's last testament. He passed away just a month after hiding the bottle in the rocks on the island. The content of the message was quite astounding. In 1959, Walker had measured the distance from those very stones to the glacier's edge, and it clocked in at a mere 167 feet. By 2013, that distance had ballooned to 400 feet. Researchers are convinced that this stark contrast between the two measurements underscores the consequences of ongoing global warming. Imagine the melting ice in Norway's mountains as a time machine revealing a treasure trove. Nearly 800 Viking artifacts tucked away for over 1,000 years have been unearthed. They give us a peek into the bustling trade networks of the Viking era and the critical role of the mountain passes in this ancient commerce. Among the finds are leather shoes, cozy woolen mittens, stylish tunics, feathered arrowheads, horseshoes, walking sticks, and kitchen gadgets from the Viking chef's toolkit. There are even Viking pack horse souvenirs. These artifacts provide us with insights into ancient travel habits and the peak times when those paths were bustling with activity, and give us a glimpse into the lives of adventurers.
Texas is home to some of the oddest, creepiest, and most unusual animals you've ever heard of. It might come as a surprise, but this state is full of creatures you'll hardly see in other places. So, let's have a look at the most amazing ones. This truly beautiful bright blue creature is called the blue sea dragon. Despite such an imposing name, the critter is actually tiny, usually no bigger than a grape. You may find it on the beach or floating beside you in the water. Now, you need to remember one thing. However pretty this little slug may look, never ever touch it. One tourist spotted a few of these pretty dragons on the shore of Mustang Island. He scooped one of the creatures up. He wanted to film it. Luckily, he put it back into the water before it could sting him. Otherwise, it would have ended badly since the blue sea dragon is venomous. Despite their tiny size, their sting can pack a punch, all because of their diet. Their favorite dish is the Portuguese man-o'-war, a jellyfish that has enough venom to paralyze small fish and crustaceans. The blue dragons first use mucus to neutralize the jellyfish's infamous stinging cells, and then they steal these cells from the man-o'-war's tentacles and store and concentrate them within their own tissues. Then they release these stinging cells on contact, which makes their own sting more powerful, even worse than that of the man-o'-war itself. These awesome creatures are also extremely sneaky. Even though their appearance is bright, to say the least, they're well-known masters of disguise. You see that vibrant blue coloring is actually on their bellies, and when they float on their backs, they simply blend with the water. As for their backs, they're gray to camouflage these animals on the seafloor. Now, how about a funny fact? A group of tiny dragons floating together is called a blue fleet. And another fact, blue dragons normally lay a string of around 16 eggs, and it takes them 3 days or so to hatch into larvae. Blue sea dragons rarely make it to the shore. They're soft-bodied, so when the animals finally get through the surf zone and are deposited on the shore, they're already broken apart. And still, watch out! Even in this case, the venom in their bodies doesn't dissipate. But of course, blue sea dragons aren't the only unusual animals inhabiting Texas. Have a look at this nightmarish creature, poisonous, slimy, and kinda immortal. Meet the Hammerhead Worm. The worst thing? It might be lurking in your garden while you're watching this video. You can easily recognize this worm by its creepy spade-shaped head. It doesn't look like any other invertebrate you've ever seen. Or any other creature, that is. At first, it was only found in East Texas. But later, researchers spotted these spine-chilling creatures in North, Central, and South Texas. Basically everywhere but the arid areas of West Texas. One of the most terrifying things about this worm might be its length. This creature can grow as long as 1 foot. Luckily, such giants aren't very common. Most hammerhead worms only reach 6 inches in length. You can come across 2 species of these worms in Texas, and both of them will have a dark stripe down the middle. The larger of these 2 species munches on earthworms, which is actually a big problem. You might know that earthworms play an important role in keeping the soil rich in minerals and overall healthy. If earthworms disappear, plants in such areas won't be getting the nutrients they need. Even for humans and pets, meeting a hammerhead worm isn't the most pleasant experience either. Hammerheads are the only terrestrial invertebrates that secrete a very dangerous neurotoxin, the same as pufferfish produce. Thanks to the sheer size of the human body, touching a hammerhead worm won't hurt you too much, but it may still cause your hand to start tingling or even go numb. It's much more dangerous for pets. There have been cases when dogs ate hammerheads, which left them feeling sick for the whole day. Interestingly, these worms are native to Southeast Asia. But they must have mastered the art of hitchhiking, since in the early 1900s they were already found in the US. Keep in mind that if you want to get rid of a hammerhead worm, which is the best course of action, the worst thing you can do is chop it with a shovel. The thing is, flatworms reproduce by ripping themselves in half, so by cutting it, you actually help the populations of the worms, turning one into 2. That's the reason why hammerheads are sometimes described as immortal, which is a bit of a stretch since these creatures can't survive in vinegar or salt. Now, even though you're safe from the hammerhead worm in West Texas, it doesn't mean you can't come across another dangerous animal, such as the land lobster from hell. These creatures are also known as vinegaroons, and they're not real crustaceans, they're arachnids. Huh? Who would have guessed? Anyway, these 8-legged critters have a really nasty bite, but it's not the worst thing about them. Land lobsters, brace yourself, spray vinegar-like 85% acid from their tails. Mostly they do it to protect themselves, but it still sounds like an unfriendly thing to do, right? A land lobster can also pinch a finger that's gotten too close with its heavy mouth parts. At the base of their abdomens, vinegaroons have long whip-like tails. That's why these arachnids are often called whip scorpions, even though they're neither related to scorpions nor have stingers. Summer rains lure these arachnids out of their burrows in search of food and love. Luckily, experts claim that land lobsters aren't poisonous to humans, but they're very likely to leave a mark with their large pinchers, which they use to capture insects. Vinegaroons can be considered useful since they eat millipedes, crickets, scorpions, and cockroaches. They hunt by sensing the vibrations of their prey with those long front legs of theirs. Since land lobsters prefer to come out after dark, you aren't likely to see one in the daylight. But if you stumble upon one, check it out. If it's a female, it may be carrying her hatchlings on her back. Now, imagine it's the middle of spring and you're walking among blooming flowers and greenery. Suddenly, you spot something extremely bizarre on the ground. The animal looks cute, fluffy, and soft-looking. The desire to touch it is irresistible. Watch out! The sting of the hairy caterpillar can pack a serious punch. This one is called the puss moth caterpillar, or asp. There are several stinging caterpillar species in Texas. the buck moth caterpillar, spiny oak slug caterpillar, saddleback caterpillar, and eel moth caterpillar. And touching any of them can lead to unpleasant consequences. If you had touched that pretty hairy thing in the park, you'd most likely start feeling a burning sensation and develop an itchy rash. In the worst case scenario, you'd even have to go to the emergency room. The main problem is that people react very differently to caterpillar toxins. Some may develop more severe reactions than others. Plus, how bad the consequences are also depends on the thickness of the skin in the affected area. In most cases, the unpleasant sensation and rash go away in a few hours or sometimes days. On the bright side, such caterpillars later turn into moths and butterflies that help pollinate flowers and trees. Getting rid of these critters means doing a massive disservice to the area where you live. Specialists are sure that coming across a stinging caterpillar won't lead to anything bad if you keep in mind the rule of thumb. If a caterpillar looks fuzzy, don't touch it. And the best solution to dealing with such creatures is educating people on what such caterpillars are, what they look like, and why it's dangerous to touch them with unprotected hands.
The Bermuda Triangle is one of the most heavily traveled shipping routes in the world. Some skeptics believe that this fact solves the Bermuda Triangle mystery. Statistically, the busier the area, the higher the frequency of accidents and disappearances. While this makes sense, it's not the frequency of disappearances that's responsible for the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. It's the lack of explanation or wreckage found. On his very first voyage to the New World in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed through the Bermuda Triangle. Columbus reported that one night, when he was on the deck of the ship, he noticed a giant light appear in the distance, unlike anything he'd ever seen before. Columbus looked at his compass for direction, and it gave off erratic readings. You might have noticed that the Bermuda Triangle doesn't appear on any world map. This is because official institutions refuse to acknowledge that the area actually exists. No one exactly knows how many ships and planes have disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. The rough estimate is 50 ships and 20 planes. Most of the time, the disappearances had no explanation and no wreckage has ever been left behind. When the TBF Avenger planes went missing, a massive search operation was conducted. Boats and planes searched the Bermuda Triangle for any signs of the aircraft. One of the boats searching was a PBM-5 Mariner airboat. The airboat took flight at 7:27 p.m. and called in a routine radio message 3 minutes later. Then, it was never heard from again. No trace was ever found of the rescue airboat or the 5 Avenger aircraft. A huge investigation was launched into the disappearance of all these vehicles, but nothing was ever discovered. The Bermuda Triangle is home to some pretty intense and unexpected weather. Storms build up quickly and unexpectedly, then disappear soon after. If you blink, you might miss it. This could explain why few distress signals are issued. Pilots and sailors never saw the weather coming. A popular theory suggests that rogue waves are responsible for the many disappearances. Rogue waves are called extreme storm waves by scientists. They occur when different weather patterns take place at the same time and cause large, unexpected waves that reach up to 100 feet tall. Witnesses say that the waves look like giant walls of water. These waves could explain why ships go down fast and without leaving any trace. Just off the coast of Japan, you'll find the Bermuda Triangle of the Pacific Ocean. They call it the Devil's Triangle. Between 1950 and 1954, 9 ships disappeared in this area without leaving a trace. The ship Kaio Maroon 5 was sent to investigate these unexplained disappearances when it also vanished. After this incident, the Japanese authorities labeled the area as a danger zone, and sailors were encouraged to avoid it. Some people blame all disasters on the extraterrestrial paranormal activity. Others suppose it's all about raging natural phenomena. Some scientists believe the cause of anomalies is the environmental changes. Also, there's a really high concentration of methane hydrates on the bottom of the ocean in the Pacific Bermuda area. This gas tends to set off, and when it happens, bubbles start forming on the surface of the water. These gas eruptions can interrupt the ability to float and can easily sink a ship. Because of this chemical reaction, there won't be even a trace left. Underwater volcanoes are said to be another possible explanation for the Japanese Dragon's Triangle. In fact, they can take down even small islands. Luckily, nobody lives there. It's a pretty common thing in this area that some of them disappear underwater and others appear out of the blue because of seismic activity. You'll never find the Dragon's Triangle on any official map of the world, so nobody's quite sure about how large it is in reality. In July 2015, 2 teenagers disappeared after setting sail off the coast of Florida. There's some mystery about what the 2 teens were really getting up to. They told their parents that they were just going to fish, but they told their friends that they were crossing to the Bahamas. Shortly after they left, a line of thunderstorms moved towards the area, and the boys were never heard from again. A massive search was conducted, but sadly, nothing was found. 1 year later, the pair's boat was found off the coast of Bermuda with a broken iPhone and some personal effects left inside. One of the most popular and bizarre theories trying to solve the Bermuda Triangle mystery comes from Charles Berlitz. He insists that the area is home to the lost city of Atlantis. The missing ships and planes and malfunctioning equipment, according to him, were all caused by rays of energy let out by the special energy crystals that power Atlantis. While this sounds silly, Berlitz's theory was convincing enough that over 20 million people bought his book worldwide. Previously, the compass wouldn't work well in the Bermuda Triangle since the lines of the 2 poles coincided here, true north and magnetic north. But if you fall into this line, your compass will behave strangely. But the magnetic north is constantly shifting, and now it's far beyond the triangle. No legend says pirates of the last centuries operate in the Bermuda Triangle, or that the Flying Dutchman makes other ships disappear. A popular theory is that ships travel to the distant past or future through a time portal in the Bermuda Triangle. Fortunately, these are all myths. Just imagine hundreds of giant tentacles reaching out to a group of ships sailing through the Bermuda Triangle. In the past centuries, they could easily sink an entire fleet, since the ships were made of wood and were lighter. Squids wrapped decks with their strong tentacles, made holes in the ship's hulls with their sharp beaks. Toothy suction cups could break the masts and tear the sails. The water was filling the holds and slowly rising to the deck. The ship sank in a matter of minutes. Survivors reached the shore and told everyone about huge monsters. This is how the legends of the Kraken appeared. Fortunately, now people have sonars and equipment for monitoring the sea space. They say the main reason why this place is so enigmatic must be the magnetic fields that form this ominous triangle. Ocean floor is made of rocks containing a lot of magnetite. It's more like iron. Magnetic fields react to the high concentration of magnetite on the ocean floor, which may start a sort of conflict between the two. It can often lead to various weather anomalies and, as a result, navigation issues. And naturally, any changes in the ocean floor or the Earth's magnetic fields influence the Bermuda Triangle a lot. Magnetic fields tend to shift their position, so do tectonic plates and even the continents, even though we never notice it. The skies are usually very clear there, but back in 1883, some people witnessed abnormal things in the area. Some claim to have seen large blocks of ice falling from the skies, and the crew even managed to save one as hard proof. Seems like the Bermuda Triangle has an alternate not only on Earth, but even in space. Spacecraft usually don't disappear into thin air, though, like there's no air. This anomalous area is really large and stretches right above the South Atlantic. It occupies the area from Chile to Zimbabwe and sits right at the point where Van Allen radiation belts are the closest to the surface of our planet. The Earth has 2 such belts, which come in handy trapping the particles that shoot in from the sun. They do a great job protecting the Earth from radiation. The magnetic field there is lower, so it allows the Earth's radiation belt to come closer to the surface. Whenever a satellite passes by, it will be exposed to radiation, which might lead to serious damage. So, no satellite can take pictures of it. The South Atlantic anomaly is part of the Earth where natural radiation just flows out of control. Still, there is little evidence that all these triangles are really dangerous. Many believe the Bermuda Triangle itself has been proven time and again to be nothing but a work of fiction. In fact, some shipwrecks, such as the Ellen Austin, gained popularity in the middle of the 20th century, while nobody even thought of drawing a triangle in the Bermuda area before that. The mystery was popularized by science fiction writers and became a common myth, while no serious research proved it any more dangerous than other parts of the world's ocean. So, the crew of the Ellen Austin back in 1881 weren't even aware of the Bermuda Triangle back then, let alone afraid of it. What do you think?
The Heikegani crab lives off the coast of Japan and has a distinct pattern on its shell that looks like a human face. More specifically, the face of an angry samurai, hence the nickname the samurai crab. The scarlet-striped cleaning shrimp is a natural hitchhiker. It stands on the sea floor and waves its long antennae for fish and sea animals to go down and pick it up. Then it pays for the ride by cleaning the host from bacteria and plankton. Sea salps are often confused with jellyfish, although they're closer to Portuguese man-o'-war. They're very quick to mature, growing from newborns to adults in less than 48 hours. The Galapagos Islands are legendary. They've got giant tortoises, blue-footed boobies, Sally Lightfoot crabs, and red-lipped batfish. But if you've ever swum around there, you might have seen something really unexpected in the water. Iguanas, everywhere. These large marine reptiles eat the algae that grow on underwater rocks. They're strict vegetarians. I bet the fish are happy about that. A long flat tail designed for swimming helps them move around, and sharp claws keep them on the rocks for their daily sunbathing sessions. But watch them closely, they sneeze a lot. They haven't got a cold or anything, they're sneezing out salt. A special gland keeps the salt out of their nose, and they've got to get rid of it somehow. Sounds painful. What's cool is that they don't mind us in the water with them. Because the islands have been so isolated, the creatures here aren't afraid of humans. Fish can fly too. Thanks to their wing-like fins, flying fish can soar a distance of about 600 feet, almost as long as 2 football fields. They need flight to escape from predators. The skeleton shrimp could be the stuff of nightmares if it wasn't so tiny. As it is, it looks like a stick insect, but almost completely transparent. This creature looks more like a fish from a horror movie than from Earth's oceans. The sea devil anglerfish resides at a whopping depth of 3,200 feet and has no shortage of weird features: razor-sharp teeth, a misshapen body, and an unsettling stare. But perhaps the creepiest thing about the sea devil anglerfish is the way it catches its prey. It has a fishing rod-type appendage on its forehead that has a glowing light attached to the end to attract animals. Once these animals come close enough to the light, bam, they're captured by the sea devil's massive jaws. These guys are even capable of eating prey larger than they are, so their eyes aren't bigger than their stomachs. Starfish can cover their prey with their stomachs and eat it outside its body. Then, they simply bring their stomachs back inside. Well, that's handy. Their relatives, sea cucumbers, can do the same party trick, except that they leave part of their guts behind to scare their attacker. It's okay, the missing parts quickly grow back. Cockatoo squids, or glass squids, are a large genus whose members can reach quite impressive size. Yet, one thing they have in common is that their bodies are transparent, and the internal organs glow in the dark. Despite the hairy octopus looking like it's forgotten to comb its hair in the morning, it's actually its skin that's sticking in every direction. Other sea creatures have a harder time realizing where the octopus itself is this way, I guess. The hairy squat lobster lives in reefs, hiding from its enemies in crevices. If you're lucky to see it, you'll instantly notice the drastic difference between its whitish hairs and vibrant pink and violet claws. If you step on a sea urchin, you're gonna know right away. Look at those spikes. While they're not aggressive, they've got a great defense going against any creature that wants to eat them. Venomous spikes and a poisonous bite. Pick your poison, literally. They live in all the oceans of the world, so avoiding them is out of the question. They mostly hang out in shallow water, hiding in rock pools and reefs. So, unmindful people step on them a lot. The long venomous spikes of the urchin look like needles. They feel like them too. They can go in quite deep. Plus, they release a strong toxin. So, what's the cure? Remove the spikes quickly and wash with salt water. Sea turtles are constantly crying. They're not sad or anything. The weeping is only because they excrete excess salts from their body through their tears. Box jellyfish tentacles grow up to 10 feet long, and each tentacle has 5,000 stinging cells. Not bad for a creature that's mostly just water. Their venom is strong enough to paralyze anything they want to eat. Now, if you happen to get stung, it's going to hurt a lot. Its toxins contain proteins that affect the heart, skin cells, and even our nervous system. No wonder it's considered one of the most dangerous creatures on the planet. I wouldn't recommend using sunscreen, soda, coffee, or other older methods. They don't work. Your best bet is some good old-fashioned seawater. Looks like jellyfish are the rulers of the ocean, not sharks. The margin sea lizard isn't an actual lizard. It's a kind of sea slug that dwells close to the water surface. It swims upside down and somersaults to get food. And let's admit, it looks very cute. When some foreign object gets into an oyster's shell, be it a grain of sand, a parasite, or garbage, the thing irritates the mollusk's inner walls. Since the animal can't spit the item out, it envelops it in thin layers that separate from the body. These pearlescent layers accumulate until they form a round pearl. In the past, people believed that pearls were the tears of mermaids. Now we know they're just some decorated debris. Dolphins have highly developed communication. They call each other by name. Each dolphin responds to a specific sound. Mostly they say, "Stop calling me Flipper." The orca is the largest of dolphin species, and they actually have different cultures. Two orcas from different social groups won't even understand each other's language. They're the only animal known to do this. I wonder if they developed any Google Translate for dolphins. The banded shrimp, or banded boxing shrimp, was really aptly named. It's got bands of color all over its body, and always stands in a boxer-like, ready-to-strike pose. The brown-lined paper bubble is another sea slug, and it definitely looks like one. It's got a special ability, though. It can quickly burrow holes in the sea floor, hiding from enemies inside them. The snakefish, as the name implies, looks a lot like a snake, but it has a very distinctive feature. It can walk on its fins. Thanks to this peculiarity, it easily crawls from one waterbed to another, choosing habitats more to its liking. On the way, a snakefish can get hungry, for sure, so it often munches on small birds and rodents. It can grow quite big, though, and hunt even larger animals. How much weirder can it get than to walk through the woods and suddenly see a huge and toothy fish stalking some rabbit? The alligator snapping turtle catches its prey by going fishing. Its tongue looks like a worm, and the turtle waits with its mouth wide open at the bottom of a stream, lake, or pond until some unsuspecting fish takes the bait. Then, snap! The jaws come together faster than the blink of an eye, and dinner is served. The mossy jellyfish is normally invisible in the dark abyss where it dwells, but when exposed to light, it will reflect it and shine beautifully. The black swallower might be small, but make no mistake, it could easily gulp down your favorite puppy. It can open its mouth extremely wide, allowing it to swallow prey twice its size. The African tigerfish will eat whatever it finds, and given its own size and that of its monstrous teeth, you can imagine it finds a lot of food. It mostly feeds on other fish, but when nutrition is scarce, it can jump out of the water and catch both insects and small birds right in the middle of the flight. It's not so big as to eat a human, of course, but the name should warn you. that it can easily take a bite out of your arm or leg. Your brain controls your arms and legs, but with an octopus, each arm is actually kind of independent, with its own special brain, held together by a bigger central brain, kind of like the conductor of an orchestra. The central brain sends higher-level signals to each arm, saying things like, "Move to the left, there's a crab behind the corner," or "Touch this silly human's foot, let's mess with him a little bit." No matter how smart their arms and legs might be, an octopus still needs to look after them all the time.